Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself again in context to the number fives. These I'm going to further clarify. As I mentioned before, I'll do it again. The number one's political environment. Number two, special interests, specifically medical. In 2004, it was a fantastic spot. Knew exactly what I was looking for. Very clearly communicate. It's head on. I've only experienced exactly what I've stated. Only in proper context. Never an ulterior motive. Never. Never experienced that before. I must be pretty fortunate to always have experienced people reading me as far as honesty, integrity. Maybe that happened because I came from Durfield and the substance up north, but no matter where I go, that should follow me, right? I'm about to share an experience here. I think it's going to be an agreement up north. And I think I'm about to share an experience down south here. I got my helping hand from the United Way out here in Birmingham. I wouldn't even have to question the United Way's wise counsel up north, ever. And I learned about help. And the help, I'm going to need to clarify here that on a very specific date, all of what's been true for over 45 years of my life, I didn't have the slightest clue. If I presented the same context up north, they would have put their own interest secondary. That's what I've experienced up north. Okay? They would have given me wise counsel. Certainly not an ulterior motive, would they? No, I've never experienced that throughout my entire 40-year history. And I don't believe being naive or being honest is a disorder in any manner. I understand that I didn't know anything about disorders. I've never experienced any disorders of any ones or twos in anything but the healthiest context. And so I am believing exactly what the intended purpose of particularly a federal, that seniority, and a law, wouldn't you have to question it? Ever. Never experienced that in over 45 years. Now, I've seen this kind of context in Walter Jacobson. And I seem to have quite strong investigative skills, and I seem to be operating, that's much earlier, and as closer to maturity, had quite a bit of experience growing. I understand I'm looking at someone as far as that agreement at a particularly high level of the most solid business practices to create that success. We're in all agreement with that, I hope. I believe we would be. And I have never experienced any maneuvers. Never. I would never believe there would be of the most serious nature that would be outright criminal. And I have seen them rounded up by much earlier experiences by Walter Jacobson in almost exact same context. I have seen this before once or twice, but I wouldn't believe it. I didn't know anything about legal or anything. I just knew exactly what I was looking for. I very clearly communicated that. And so I met with a professional in the field, and I made the most general inquiry, and I would believe that if they told me there's nothing around here, come back up north, you better go up north, up north if you want that. That's exactly what would have happened up north, without any question. Without any question. I'm aware there's some controversy when medical has come into play. I would never believe it. Unprofessional, mixed messages, conflicting, ulterior motive. Never. Never be tolerated by what I've seen on Lake County. Over 40 years, I have never experienced anything like this. I'm sure it'd be all over the newspapers. Maybe I'm a lucky one. In any event, I clearly inquired about what I had paid many tens of thousands of dollars for U.S. Department of Labor, Education, Justice, most general inquiry, and I understand I paid many years for those services, and I would certainly expect that someone who is entrusted as a servant for funding that they receive would be properly utilized and applied. I didn't even have to question that. And I had an individual that I have a photographic memory. As I mentioned, my building on curiosity happens to pick up everything, emotions, actions. It's pretty doggone close to 100%, if I really give it a thought. Very little loss. If I'm dealing with a tremendous amount of information there, it may take a bit of time to reconstruct it. It is 100% though if I do have exact reference points. I didn't know anything about the experience in any manner other than what I've experienced. That's in complete agreement with a lot of people from, for the last, 40 years. I met with an individual. I was very clear exactly what I was seeking. I was seeking from the highest level of expertise, professional career counseling, specifically related to my previous experience, and that led off on about 100 PhDs in vocational psychology, and that's exactly what I was seeking. I didn't know it at the time, and I'm very cooperative, always. And I did not know anything about ulterior motives, and in context to what's been true for 45 years, as of present date, right now. Because that's all I have is today. So I have to learn it, experience, and I grow. And I met with an individual that obviously was a criminal, a felon, that I would never believe I'm saying that. A felon that obviously heard a word entrepreneur, and very quickly his attention span became much more interested in creating at least 2 disorders. One of them was entrepreneur, his reciprocal communications and following actions. And then obviously there was a second maneuver which I don't have the slightest reservation. He had to be filming that. He had to be. I wouldn't believe I'm saying what I'm saying because that's a delusion. That's a third disorder. Okay? So, what I understood was I was meeting with a professional in the field, and I expected exactly the intended purpose to be served. Any question. The request I made is as reasonable as it gets. Instead, the number 1, I understand, Republican appointed, ultimately, and quite a bit higher, affecting tens of thousands of people and probably hundreds of thousands over the years, directly, probably, in just this state. And quite a few other ones. This is something I have no interest in knowing anything about. And all of a sudden, the number 1 became a number 2. And I was dealing with a felon, as I now understand, as of today, that decided to falsify some medical records. It's obvious he did. It's obvious he did. To concoct an evaluation like that, considering what's true for over 40 years of my life, is absolutely impossible. If you knew what was true about my background, that's why I attempted to explain for a very brief period. I think that's, he was more interested in falsifying medical records without the slightest reservation at this point. You cannot change what I can fully prove is true about over 40 years. But he knows nothing about me, and he's obviously a felon who was much more interested in falsifying those medical records. Now, I don't know exactly what he submitted to PhDs and masters, but that evaluation that I still maintain is absolutely impossible. That proves that the information that was submitted to them, no, it's not any of my actions or anything. He clearly said, when I contacted him a month ago to clarify brain damage, that's exactly what he had medically documented. It's obvious. An invalid that is desperately in need for a psychiatrist to release them to work. So fortunately, one day, if they're even lucky, they could achieve it, to be at a stockman at a health food store. I don't even question anybody who looks at that vocational evaluation would be in complete agreement that those medical records were falsified. I did not know about medical malpractice at that time, nor would I believe it. From that point forward, it became very interesting, this experience, because a number one became a number two. And the intended purpose, obviously, I had a bit of a cushion. Now, I certainly did not put all my eggs in one basket. I did everything I could to brand myself with that experience. I've been at it since 2004. If he would have been, anyone up north would have said, there's nothing around her like that, you should head right back up to where you came from. I would have, that is what should have happened. If you look at the true healthiest context, that is what I would experience in Lake County. Instead, though, he got busy committing his criminal activity, which I can absolutely 100% substantiate by the end result of those medical records. I then have explained this in earlier reviews. To be exact, I would have to look at the exact date of the files that I have to 100% recall it. I am completely in survival with an extreme time restraint at the moment. Maybe later I'll reconstruct it. I'm not going to get all into, obviously, which is a result of falsified medical records from Mr. Alan Markowitz. And not the slightest clue that medical malpractice had just been committed. I certainly understand it as of today. That evaluation is the end result of a criminal who is a felon, not anything to do in any manner other than very serious criminal activity that I'm able to prove. It doesn't have any resemblance. Exactly what I stated. So what is the difference between the North and the South? I understand that would never happen up north if you knew someone came from the background that it came from. I believed initially in earlier reviews I said it was complete negligence. I am going to now correct it that it's outright the result of falsified medical records by a felon. I obviously dealt with a supervisor that was also a felon. And I don't believe anything had to do with either of them, because as I continued to escalate that to a seniority, which I expected that correction to occur, if there was a misunderstanding with a supervisor or whatever, or the actual service provider, the employee, I don't even question that would have been corrected up north. There would be a complete understanding, and I would have gotten professional career counseling from a PhD, and most likely it would tell me head back up north. Now, I've clearly communicated what the College Lake County's policy is, and obviously that's what I'm used to for 45 years. I decided to stay down here. I thought it would work its way out. But when I then, after a considerable amount of number ones became number twos, I decided to speak to Mr. Jim Carden, a felon who is responsible for heading this criminal enterprise, is about the best I can make of it. I take it if you falsify medical records, that is of the most serious criminal nature. I had no knowledge of this. All he said was, mental illness. I'm sorry, that's false. It's very obvious. I then had a assistant, Rachel Hughes, come up and specifically look to substantiate the falsified medical records. I then then they really put the power on me by an attorney, Stephen K. Simpson, who I asked, which I would not believe these are medical records as of 2004. Obviously, they are. And he further committed a very serious crime of retaining those falsified medical records. Those are medical records. That vocational evaluation, absolutely. I didn't have the slightest clue back then. I cooperated with them. I saw some twos with an LCSW. That was the most unprofessional experience I've ever had. It was wildly exaggerated with individuals popping pills, ultimately. And I must have been very fortunate that I got a good one, that I am clean, I'm healthy. But that is when Stephen K. Simpson and Jim Harris III decided to go with the number twos again with a human studies professor from the university system. It is obvious that these are criminals. They are falsifying medical records. They do not know that I came out of state, nor do I believe that they are smart enough to decipher that. I understand these medical records are 100% falsified. It is impossible for those original, every bit of that medical record is falsified, if it even is there anymore. It could be somebody else's. Anything. This is the number ones and two in Birmingham. But I am naturally a very cooperative person, and so I continued to follow. While in reality they were falsifying medical records, they were much more interested in committing criminal acts of the most serious form, is the best I can relate as of today. I would never believe that. And yet you cannot change what's true for over 45 years of my life, which is very interesting, that psychological malpractice. What was being committed there by Mr. Jim Carden, Stephen K. Simpson, and the person who has committed the psychological malpractice is Jim Harris III solely. He has committed psychological malpractice an average of 3 times a year. Now, what I can say here is I'm going to get on to the next review. I will label this 2004, and I'm going to do now the 2005 and 2006, and probably getting into 2007. All I'm seeking is a PhD in vocational psychology, professional career counseling. That's it. I would never believe what I just said any time in the past. This is current status as of today, and I'm sure there's going to be more growth and clarification as necessary. Thank you for taking the time to... It would be hard to believe. I wouldn't believe it. Would you? I don't know it wherever I go unless it's outright criminal. These are felons. I have never experienced anything about immunity, nor do I believe something like this would be covered by immunity. I have no interest in any manner for that type of substance. I've been extremely fortunate throughout my life to never experience anything like this, and it would be hard for me to believe. Are you in agreement? It's really what you believe. I can just be honest with you. Thank you for letting me share an experience. Now I will continue on with the next number 5. Thank you. And believe me, I'm in extreme, you're looking at someone in survival. Absolute survival coming up here. You're looking at someone who's very stable. And what I just shared with you, in no manner, I understand, is not delusional. However, you got a human studies professor that's going to cover up that crime. And I would not believe that. I wouldn't believe, and I didn't know it. I had to learn it first. Thank you for getting to know me.